I think it'd be fair to say that David Moyes is not universally popular amongst the West Ham fans, but he has one thing to his advantage, and that is that he's seen as separate to David Sullivan. In fact, I'd go a stage further than that. I would say he's seen as being a victim of David Sullivan. And that's very, very important because the club, to one extent or another, is in turmoil. For instance, when we have protests, be they in the stadium, outside the stadium, or anywhere else, there's very much a sympathetic tone towards David Moyes. I mean, certainly you looked at the first ever Burnley protests and the fallout from that, and David Moyes very much seen as a victim of that. David Moyes very much seen as a victim of being jettisoned after his first stint in charge when he kept us up. Everyone thought it was quite a harsh thing to do. Now, don't get me wrong, I think there are a lot of people that wanted a new manager, although not precisely Pellegrini, by the way, as David Sullivan indicated. The fans asked for Pellegrini and he gave him to us. That's not what happened. But a lot of people saw Moyes' style of football during the first stint and thought, thanks, Dave, thanks for keeping us up, but we'd like to move on. But again, very much he was seen as quite harshly done by. I think when the Pellegrini experiment didn't work and Moyes again was brought back and then was denied initially Stuart Pearce, sympathies were with him. You'd often hear people that weren't even particularly Moyes fans who were suspicious of Moyes tactically and his player selections and certainly substitutions. They would say, well, hold on a second, he's not being given the tools to do the job by David Sullivan in terms of his coaching staff and in terms of his scouting. We all know the story of Moyes arriving and there being no scouting left because Huselos and his son, it was all a paper-based system. They'd taken it with us and he walked in. Hold on, where's all the dossiers on the players? Again, operating with one hand tied behind his back. And what that does is it means that whilst things are not going well for David Moyes, there's a certain amount of mitigation there. And now we sort of fast forward to this season and we look at the squad and we look at the composition of the squad, and it's been an unkept secret for quite some time that David Moyes would like initially some fullbacks. We know he wanted Matty Cash. We weren't able to get Matty Cash and actually went to Aston Villa for £15 million. And actually, Aston Villa, a club that just narrowly escaped relegation, who are showing far more ambition than we are at the moment. But he wasn't able to get him, and what you would think would be an affordable fee at £15 million. We know he'd looked at Rico Henry again, but was probably priced out of it. We also know that he liked Ollie Watkins. And certainly when you look at our bench for the Carabao Cup game and there was no striker on it, you think, well, maybe a striker would be of some benefit to us. And then you look at the pursuit of his number one target, which is James Tarkowski. And you very much get the impression that there were never serious bids. Basically, David Sullivan was creating a situation whereby he could go back to David Moyes and he could say, David, we tried. I honestly did. I made 3 bids for the defender. Burnley wouldn't sell. Defender didn't want to come. Tried to help you out. Just couldn't do it, mate. Again, I think he's seen as a victim in that the manager has made his targets and the owner doesn't want to give them to him. Certainly when you look at the Talk Sport interview that David Sullivan did, the Car Crash Talk Sport interview, then what he was saying about the manager, there were a lot of people, and a lot of people who don't particularly rate David Moyes, thought that David Sullivan was throwing him under a bus. Now, Moyes wasn't on his own. He was in good company, because not only did David Sullivan throw Moyes under a bus, he threw us as fans under a bus, because it was all our Huselos and Pellegrini was all our fault. He also threw Pellegrini under a bus. And during the same interview, and I'm getting to my point, by the way, during the same interview, he indicated that it was a little bit expensive to pay the travel to go to Everton. I mean, this is somebody who's willing to waste millions on loan signings that the manager doesn't even want. Yet he's moaning about a 50 grand bill to take a bunch of millionaire players up to Merseyside. My point in all of this is, whether you like David Moyes or you don't, he's seen as one of us. And what I mean by that is a victim and separate from David Sullivan. And that is very important. Basically, it's very important that Moyes is seen and perceived not to be towing the company line in that sense, because there's massive well, I say malcontent towards David Sullivan at the moment. And this is why I think David Moyes made a massive error yesterday. He really did, by not taking that cup seriously. Now, I think we can all respect saving members of the team for the Leicester game. I think we can all accept that after 3 games with only 3 points, that getting to safety and getting to a respectable position in the Premier League is quite important at the moment. I heard no complaints from anybody about Mikel Antonio being wrapped up in cotton wool. He wasn't even featured on the bench. And I take it he didn't even travel with the squad. And quite right too. Why should he travel up to Lancashire when he can have his feet up and get ready for the game at the weekend? I didn't hear too many complaints at all with him resting people like Souček and Bowen, Ogbonna, so on and so forth. It made sense. But, here's the but. The moment you select that team, the moment you pick a team and you put it out in a competition, you've got to try and win it. And this is where it gets slightly confusing. Because had the team have not contained Declan Rice, for instance, at centre-half, which obviously we know now in hindsight turned out to be a bad move, but we weren't ever to know that he would play that badly. Would he to play Elise or Baptiste there? Was he to pick Harrison Ashby at right back, not play Cresswell, play Longelo at left back? He would very much have given the indication that, hold on, this is a game I'm willing to throw, let's say. But he didn't. He picked Declan Rice. He picked Balbuena next to him. He picked Cresswell. Again, regardless of what you think of Cresswell, it's a senior left back. Sebastian Haller was up front. Yarmolenko's been in great form. And it very much looked like he'd picked a team to win the game. More so than that, it looked like he'd picked a bench that, was the game not going well, could come off and he could impact it. So if the midfield wasn't functioning, you could bring on Thomas Souček. If the defence wasn't working particularly well, you bring on Ogbonna. If you need another goal, you've got Jared Bowen on there, who is a player in fantastic form. Then what happened is so unacceptable, it's unbelievable. And the reason it's bad for David Moyes is because it removes him from that sympathetic opinion amongst the fans. After last night, it's very hard to look on David Moyes as a victim. It's very hard to look on David Moyes as separate from David Sullivan. He almost went from somebody that's like us, suffering, if you like. David Moyes, let's be fair, David Moyes is in a job he probably doesn't want to do. David Moyes is probably in a job for the least favourable of Premier League owners. Had he been able to get the job at Everton instead of Carlo Ancelotti, he probably would have gone there. Let's be fair, most jobs in the Premier League are probably better than working at West Ham, particularly when you look at the infrastructure and the support that's around you and the way you're going to be constantly undermined by the owners. In fact, I would say that it really is a rarity amongst Premier League clubs, the way that undermining process happens to all and sundry at the club. However, doing this looks like he's towing the company line. It looks like he's on Sullivan's side. And when it feeds into Sullivan moaning about being in the competition, you just look at it and you think, well, hold on, Dave, this is slightly different. This is not picking a team and then going up to win it and resting your players, which would have been totally acceptable. This is picking a team, going up, competing, drawing, being at 1-1, and then 2-1, where it was still retrievable, this game, and making a decision, which is, I'm not going to put any substitutes on here. You will not convince me that David Moyes, Alan Irvine, Stuart Pearce, Kevin Nolan looked at that game and thought, this is going well. We are going to win this. At 2-1, it was plain and clear that Yarmolenko was useless, that Felipe Anderson was useless, that the midfield wasn't functioning, and that Sebastian Haller was isolated. Everybody knew it. Everybody. As I say, you would not convince me otherwise. And if that was plain and clear, which it was quite obvious at the time that action was required. And I only labour that point because if they'd seen that there was a problem, if they'd identified that there was a problem, and everyone could see it, why would you not fix it? And this is what plays in to what I was alluding to at the start. And that was a case of, it very much gave the impression that a clear decision was made at that point not to continue in the League Cup. And whilst I think I probably gave over how frustrated I was last night in the review with just going out of the League Cup. What remains today, the day after, is what I called it, which was a complete surrender and a decision to leave. I said it was slow. I said the team was slow. I thought we were ponderous. I thought we were disinterested. Those are hallmarks of a West Ham team playing badly. I've seen that many, many times before. But to not try and fix it is scandalous. It is actually disgusting what happened. And what it does, it feeds in to him making a decision and towing the company line on behalf of the club. And that puts David Moyes in a very, very bad situation. Because, as I say before, I felt that Moyes had not the backing of all the fans. I like Moyes. Look, let me get this right. If you watch this channel on a regular basis, you know that I've done 5 or 6 very positive videos about David Moyes. I like the guy. I like the way he handled the lockdown. I like the way he does voluntary work. I like the way he carried himself. I actually, do you know what? I find his football is a little bit hoofball, but by and large, I find his football is attacking at the moment. I don't mean attacking in the terms of Barcelona or anything like that, but we create chances. That's what we do. We create chances and we're starting to score goals. From lockdown to now, I don't think it's been too bad. Quite happy to support the manager. But I think it's quite important that he is seen as on our side. And I think up to now, he very much has been. But he's in dodgy territory now because there are a lot of people who don't think as warmly towards Moyes as I do. There are a lot of people who are just frustrated with him as a manager. And even when we did our phone-in the other day, there were people on there saying, I don't particularly like Moyes, but it would be harsh not to give him a chance. Let me tell you what that is. That's people being decent towards him. That's people thinking, well, he's been good to us, so we will be good back to him. That's goodwill. The moment David Moyes starts making horrendous decisions like, actually, at 2-1, I can impact this game. I can bring substitutions on. I can make this game 2-2. Absolutely, that could have happened. Bring Bowen on, bring Souček on, bring Ogbonna on. That could have happened. At the moment he looks at it and thinks, I can impact this game, but I'm not going to. It is healthier for the club to go out of the League Cup. The moment he does that, he's in very dangerous territory because then what happens is the goodwill evaporates. A lot of it as well. I wouldn't mind, by the way, if all he had was 11 decent players. He'd put the youngsters out and there was nothing else to do. He could have to put his hand up and say, look, I've got to save my main team for Leicester. I put the youngsters out. I really wanted them to win, but they just weren't good enough against the senior Everton side. But that's not what happens. We've got 2 teams. We've got a big squad. We have 2 teams. All I'm asking is that second team, that cup team, once we've identified who they are and we've got 11 on the pitch and we've got a subs bench, you then try and win it. You've seen how fit Thomas Souček is. You've seen how fit Jarrod Bowen is. This is not going to particularly impact them. If they come on and play, I don't know, 30 minutes? We're not playing till, Saturday, Sunday? I think it's Sunday. I mean, come on. You give them 30 minutes off training. You let them rest for an additional day. It's really, really easy. If at that point you make your 3 substitutions, you change formation, you turn around at the end and you say, I'm gutted to go out. You do your press conference, be it by Zoom. I know he wasn't in the stadium, but you do your press conference and you say, really gutted. I felt I picked a strong team. And I did pick a strong team. I was trying to save some players for Leicester. At the point, it looked like we were losing and we need to get back into the game. I brought on 3 strong substitutes. I'm desperate to win a cup. It didn't happen. I apologise. We'll be looking to, hopefully we'll be in a stronger position in the league when the FA Cup comes around, and we're going to really give that our all. We're going to give that our maximum, because that's what should have happened, and that's not what did happen. And this is all going to pass without an explanation, by the way. And so this will pass without an explanation, probably because those press conferences are done via Zoom call. That everybody's cherry picked. They probably have to submit your questions beforehand. I'd like to ask a few questions at a press conference of David Moyes. And as I say, it's not me being overly nasty towards him. I've got a lot of time. He's got a lot of credit in the bank with me. He really has. But I'd like to ask these questions. I really would. But we won't get a sniff. And no offence to him, a journalist from the Sun or whatever, he's not going to ask these nuanced questions that us as West Ham fans are more interested in. From David Moyes himself, I find it odd. Look, it's a bad decision. But taking that aspect of the club away, I don't understand this desire just not to fail. I gave the example yesterday in the review of a bus driver that goes out to work and his only ambition is not to crash. A plumber goes out, as long as I haven't flooded anything, I've had a good day. But there's no ambition to excel. There's no ambition to do well. A badge of honour, the Sam Allardyce badge of honour. I've never been relegated. Brilliant. Brilliant. But you've never won anything. You've never done anything. You've not achieved. You've just not failed. Achievement and not failing are two very, very different things. Why doesn't David Moyes want a cup on his CV? I don't get it. I don't understand. I don't understand this paucity of ambition that he's got. Why? He's a rich man. I mean, I don't know David Moyes' bank account, unfortunately, but I think he got £8 to £10 million payoff from Man United. He obviously wasn't earning pennies at Everton beforehand. The first time he kept us up, he got £2 million. He got another £2 million. He kept us up last time. Let's be fair. David Moyes must have over £10 million in the bank or something like that. Yet, well, the thing that frustrates me most about it is it seemed that his desire to hang on to his job by surviving in the Premier League, his weekly job, which must be a struggle, seemed to supersede his ambition to win. And that is unacceptable. David Moyes must be aware of his reputation for not doing substitutions. He has to be. So why would you play into that? How's that comfortable for anyone on the bench making those phone calls and going back and forth to him? The whole bench must have known that action was required. I like David Moyes. I think we still have a chance of beating Leicester at the weekend, regardless of how rampant they are. I like what he's trying to do with the team. I like what he's trying to do with the tactics. I like the fact that we attack and we pose a goal threat. And I don't say this with any glee at all, but he's actually put a black mark against his name yesterday. I try to be reasonable, really have tried to be reasonable regarding these substitutions, but it's very, very hard to look at what happened and to not see it as contrived and planned. I don't mean before the game. I think he travelled up there with the best of intentions. But quite frankly, and little ones, put your fingers in your ears now if you're watching. Quite frankly, I mean, he got up there and he shat it. It's as simple as that. He looked into the eyes of the beast and he didn't fancy it. There'll be no call from David Sullivan today. There'll be no phone call where David Moyes has to explain himself. But I do feel he made a decision yesterday, David Moyes, that wasn't his to make. He made a decision on behalf of the fans when he decided not to do anything. At 2-1 down, when he decided not to do anything, on behalf of the football club, he made a decision. That is, I am going to let us drift out of the League Cup. And as a club, with a cup heritage and a cup history such as West Ham United, that is completely and utterly unacceptable.